well, calories in, calories out doesn't work for me because I ate in a calorie deficit and I didn't lose weight. I've had it before where week to week, my average didn't change. But when they stratified people just according from lowest adherence to best adherence, there was a linear effect on weight loss. What I'll tell people is if you're worried about NEAT, one thing you can do, these watches, for example, people are like, oh, well, it told me I burned this many calories. They are not accurate for energy expenditure. There was a meta-analysis, 2018, I want to say, between 28 and 93% overestimation of energy expenditure by these watches.
Fitness trackers. So for those of you listening, we're not going to name the brand, but fitness trackers, so wrist-worn fitness trackers.
And this is across the board. So like depending on the brand, it could be, more or less, but they all overestimated the amount of the calories you burn from exercise. So this is actually a great example where people go, well, calories in, calories out doesn't work for me because I ate in a calorie deficit and I didn't lose weight. When I talk to them, usually they went to an online calculator, put in their information, it spat out some calories to eat, and they ate that and didn't lose weight. And it's like, well, what do you think is more likely, that you're defying the laws of conservation of energy or gotten the right number for you? Yeah. The next thing is a lot of people weigh very sporadically, and I'll tell people, like, if you're going to make an intentional weight loss a goal, first thing in the morning, right after you go to the bathroom, do it every day and take the average of that for the week and then compare that to the next week's average.
Can I ask one quick, sorry to interrupt, but one quick question about that. When you say go to the bathroom, not to wake up, use the bathroom, all forms that you're ready, and then get on the scale, take that measurement, average that across the week. Maybe every Monday you take that value.
And the reason I recommend doing that is if you're just kind of sporadically weighing in, as somebody who weighs themselves pretty regularly, I mean, my weight will fluctuate 5-6 pounds and not seemingly changing much, and that's just, those short-term changes are fluid. I've had it before where week to week, my average didn't change, but between the lowest weigh-in from a previous week and the highest weigh-in might have been like 8 pounds. If you're somebody who just randomly is weighing in and you're eating in a calorie deficit, you just weigh in one day where you just, whatever reason, holding some more fluid, and you go, oh, see, this isn't working. When in reality, your average might be dropping. That's one of the reasons. And actually, believe it or not, weight fluctuations are actually identified as a major reason why people get discouraged from weight loss. Kind of stops the buy-in, when they have a fluctuation up. That's one of the reasons early on that low carb diets tend to work really well, is because people lose a lot of water weight really quickly and they get that buy-in. So, oh, this is working.
Yeah, we can return to that in a little bit, because I have theories as to, when people eat less carbohydrate, they excrete more water, and they'll see, for the first time, they'll see some definition in their abs, and they'll go, oh my God, this diet's amazing. And the fluid loss does hold that promise. I think fluid loss can do some other things that might make people literally feel lighter. We have some negative effects.
Why do we have such a hard time losing weight, but more so keeping it off? Of obese people, 6 out of every 7 obese people will lose a significant amount of body weight in their life. Why do we still have an obesity problem? They don't keep it off. Why don't they keep it off? Look at the research. Basically what it suggests is because people think about, I'm going to do a diet and I'm going to lose this weight, and they do not give any thought to what happens afterwards. Think about if you have some kind of chronic disease. You can't just take insulin once and that's it. You got to take it continuously, otherwise you're going to have problems. If you do a diet and you lose 30 pounds, fantastic. But if you then just go back to all your old habits, you're going to go back to where you were, if not more. You can't create a new version of yourself while dragging your old habits and behaviors behind you. So what I'll tell people is, because people say, well, I'm doing a carnivore diet, or I'm doing this diet or that diet. And I'll say, that's fine. Do you see yourself doing that for the rest of your life? And if the answer is yes, if you believe that that's going to be sustainable for you, and plenty of people, low carb, intermittent fasting, whatever, they say, felt easy. I could do this forever. If you're going to lose weight, you have to invoke some form of restriction, whether it is a nutrient restriction like low carb, low fat, a time restriction, intermittent fasting, any form of time restricted eating, or calorie restriction, tracking macros, whatever. Pick the form of restriction that feels the least restrictive to you as an individual, and also do not assume that it will feel the same for everybody else, because I made this mistake. I track things. And so I allow myself to eat a variety of foods. I allow myself to eat some fun foods, but I track everything. I'm able to modify my body composition and be in good health doing that. It doesn't feel hard for me. Part of it's I've just been doing it for so long. But to other people, that's very stressful. They say, well, I'd rather just not eat for 16 hours. If that feels easy for them, there was a couple of meta-analysis on popular diets. And basically what they showed was they were all equally terrible for long-term weight loss. So really what it says is, what is the diet that's going to be easiest for you to adhere to in the long term? And you should probably do that. Where I step back and take the 10,000 foot view, somebody will say, well, I'm going to do ketogenic because I want to increase my fat oxidation and I want to do this. And they're talking about all these mechanisms and everything. And that's great. Can you do it for the rest of your life? right? Is this going to be something sustainable for you? And if the answer is no, you probably need to rethink what your approach is going to be.
Incredibly important message. Basically that, if I could highlight, if there was a version of highlighter, boldface, and underline, and for those of you that heard it, listen to it twice and then go forward, because it's absolutely key. I think it also explains a lot of the so-called controversy that exists out there. I think it also crosses over with the placebo effect. I almost want to say, pick the nutrition plan that you think you can stick to for a long period of time, ideally forever, and pick your placebo too, because there is a lot of placebo woven into each and every one of these things. Intermittent fasting, keto, probably even vegan versus omnivore versus carnivore.
Well, they even talk about, the diet honeymoon period, right? Where like you go into a diet and you're all fired up about it, and like you're very adherent, and then what happens with every single diet, without exception in research studies, is once you get past a few months, adherence just starts waning and going off.
Here we are really talking about a form of relationship. It's a story that you co-create with somebody, but that you live into the future of that story. I'm seeing a lot of parallel, highly functional and effective diet. And I love it. I'm not setting this parallel up artificially. I'm setting up because I think that ultimately it was the brain and our decisions about what we are going to stick to are tremendously powerful.
Keep in mind, when you look at the research data, the meta-analyses on, say, time-restricted eating versus non, when calories are equated, doesn't seem to be a difference in weight loss, fat loss, and most biomarkers of health. Same thing for low carb versus low fat. If you equate calories and protein, there was a meta-analysis done by Kevin Hall back in 2017. I think there was 22 studies in this, but all of them provided food to the participants. That's important because that ensures that adherence is going to be much higher in those studies, whereas like various free living studies, sometimes you can see funky results. Low carb versus low fat, when protein and calories are equated, basically no difference in fat loss. Now, some people get upset about this, but it's like, to me, that's like, this is great because you get to pick the tool you want. One tool, it doesn't seem to be that much better than another, so pick the one that works for you. If you look at the male versus female studies, they seem to respond to some similar way, like similar calorie deficit seems to produce similar results. Now, training-wise, we do know that female, like the muscle fibers adapt a little bit differently to training, but without getting too far into the weeds, it doesn't really change the way you should train, because for the most part, building muscle, there's a lot of different ways to build muscle. Loads up to maybe like 30 reps, as long as it's taken close to failure, basically the same effect on building muscle, at least in the short term, as heavy loads for low reps. It's mostly about taking the muscle close to fatigue or failure. You don't have to go to failure, but getting close within a few reps. If you're between 1 rep and 30 reps, seem to produce similar results. When it comes to female specific training, they actually put on a similar amount of lean mass as a percentage of their starting lean mass as men. In fact, there's no statistically significant difference in the amount of lean mass they put on. Absolute amount of lean mass that's added will be greater for men because they started with a greater amount of lean mass. But the relative increase in lean mass is pretty much the same from similar training. But that also could be simply due to the fact that they're not able to use as heavy of loads to induce hypertrophy. I kind of have this theory that absolute load matters. When you look at like the most elite powerlifters, the super heavyweights aren't squatting 3 or 4 times a week because they're squatting 800-900 pounds.